Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm
Hello,
Nathan, and this is
Marcy.
Marcy, the fabulous,
Thank
and and we are going to do a point of view video for you today.
you.
The original one we did want to watch. The system will let us watch it, so maybe it's
No.
not today, maybe for another time. So we've got a backup.
Yeah.
It's the haunting of the Hexham heads. Have no idea what this is about, so it
No
should be quite
clue.
interesting.
Mhm.
So we hope you're going to enjoy it. Please, please, please put all your comments and we'll
Yes.
reply to them, whatever, big or small. Please
Mhm.
make them constructive. We love them dearly.
Yes.
And if you like this video, please like, share, ring that
Subscribe.
notification bell.
Yep. Do the
Um,
whole round.
do the whole shebang. Yes, it's really important. Unfortunately, it's like by liking it helps the algorithm,
Algorithm.
and
Yep.
really,
It
really
does.
generates good positive loving for this channel.
Mhm.
And you never
Yeah.
know, you don't want to miss something because of all these videos. We've got so many videos for you
Yeah.
coming up.
We
Wow,
we have
it's
so
endless.
much. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Ouch. We have that much.
Yeah, and we
Yes.
have so many that are just waiting to be made too. So
Yeah.
it's yeah.
And I apologize about the cleaning. I'm so sorry. I've got a few
Mhm.
cobwebs to
Yeah.
dust down.
I'll get to it tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah,
Yep.
she's not very good. Okay, so should we crack on?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
ready.
All right, let's.
We have open space. We're grounded.
Yeah, yeah.
We're safe.
Rounded.
We are good to go.
We are
Yes.
good to go.
It was 2 a.m. one night in the early 1970s when Dr. Anne Ross was suddenly awoken by a cold chill running through her body. The room was unusually freezing. Anne lay there in the darkness, aware that something was wrong, but she wasn't sure what. Her husband lay soundly asleep next to her. Dr. Ross tried to get comfortable again to fall back asleep, but that's when she noticed the movement just out of the corner of her eye by the wardrobe. A shape, a figure. When she looked up properly, it was stood by their bedroom doorway. The dim light from the hallway illuminated the room just enough for her to get an idea of what she was looking at. Dr. Ross thought she must be dreaming still. This wasn't possible. It stood around 6 feet tall, with a slight hunch to its back. It was dark, almost shadow-like, but this was a very real and very tangible being. The bottom half looked very much like normal human legs, but its top half was like an animal. Later, Dr. Ross would describe it almost akin to a wolf, covered in dark black fur. Whatever it was, it seemed to become aware that Dr. Ross was looking at it. The creature slowly walked out of the room. Dr. Ross could hear it, creeping along the landing, towards the stairs. But, for reasons she could never really put into words, her first reaction was not to wake her husband. Instead, she calmly got out of bed and began to follow, silently walking behind the quiet padded sounds of its feet as it walked down the stairs. Disturbingly, Dr. Ross claimed that she didn't feel in control at that moment. She felt compelled to follow it.
So I'm gonna just pause there.
Uh-huh.
Did you pick anything up?
Right away, my heart started racing. So I felt almost like anticipating dread. I don't, it's like when you hear something, but you don't move, and then you start to like kind of panic, like that, like panic without knowing. Like you start to make up what could be happening, and you just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
make yourself panic. Um,
I got
yeah.
not everything not everything looks as it seems. And before he said, he said the whatever the creature was, and it looked, and it just casually turned away. I went, I just mean she's going to follow it. but it's out of her control. And he was like, she started to get up. I was like, no, don't. Oh my God, there we go.
Yeah.
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 So she probably may have thought she was in a, like a trance.
Yeah, I get more of a sleepwalking sort of vibe
Yeah. Hmm.
that
Yeah.
she's not, yeah, she's, it's like kind of like in the middle of hallucinating, like you're like right in between awake and dream,
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
right? And
Yeah.
I've never slept walked.
Oh, I used to do it a
So,
lot as a
oh
kid.
really?
Yeah,
Do
a
you, I
lot.
don't know if you have any memory of that when you wake up, or
No, I
like do
can't
you?
remember. My mum said it always used to, yeah, used to walk around the house, uh, rocking backwards and forward on the stairs. What else? Oh, found me down the road in my gym jams walking.
But
Uh,
did you have a dream
no,
when you woke up
don't
that you
remember,
could
don't
have
remember, don't
nothing?
remember, nothing, don't remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get like a half awake, half asleep sort of vibe.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm unsure about what the creature is. I haven't got it. I don't know. I haven't got anything yet.
It's mostly a shadow, but I don't get that it's physically in the 3D with her.
Ooh,
It's more
mm,
subconscious,
okay.
shadow figure that she's following.
Yeah.
She definitely thinks she's following something. It's real to her, but it's not in the 3D. It wouldn't no one else would have seen it. Is, you know.
Is it a wolf type creature?
I actually did. I actually think that that description was
I
fairly
thought, hang
like
on, is it a
accurate.
werewolf? What
Yeah,
you
that's
call a
what it
werewolf?
kind of feels like the a hairy humanoid, but
Yeah,
also wolf top.
yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, I think that I don't think that that's a stretch.
Okay, well let's have a look.
Hmm.
Though it were leading her somewhere. As she headed down the stairs, she got another look at it. From the position she was stood, she could see it now, shuffling down the hallway. This second glimpse of the creature was enough to snap her out of whatever trance she appeared to be in. The
Mm.
curiosity was gone, and now fear and adrenaline were racing through her body.
And then she went, Grandma, is that you?
I was gonna say it's gonna shift. It's gonna shift into something else,
Yeah.
for
Shapeshifter.
sure. Hmm.
Yeah.
It's gonna shift into
I
something.
suddenly got Red Riding Hood in my head. That's why I said grandma. I was like,
Ooh.
yeah. Okay, let's have a look.
Didn't
Yeah.
know what she was seeing, but she knew it wasn't good. Dr. Ross raced upstairs, back to her bedroom, waking up her husband, archaeologist Richard Feacham. He didn't really believe what his wife had claimed to see, but concerned there was an intruder in the home where their children were sleeping. The pair searched the house from top to bottom. No sign of anyone, human or beast, could be found. It would be easy to chalk this up to a nightmare on the part of Dr. Ross. However, she may not have known it at the time, but she wasn't the first to be visited by this creature, and she wouldn't be the last.
Mm.
Dr. Ross was a well-respected expert in the field of Celtic studies. It wasn't unusual for her home to be filled with strange artifacts. But, just 2 days prior to this incident, she had received a package that contained two objects. These two objects would go on to become the source of one of the most enduring paranormal mysteries of all time. Get yourself a warm drink, dim the lights and get comfortable. It's long overdue, but it's time we talk about one of the great paranormal tales. A story of haunted objects, pranksters, confused scholars, and even were-sheep. This is the horrifying story of the Hexham Heads. Welcome to the tape library. I'm curious before we get...
Have you got anything? I wondered if it was associated with something like
I was gonna make a guess as to what was in the box, and I saw not necessarily heads, but two small rounded objects.
yeah.
And I didn't even think, oh yeah, the title and then and then the box. So that's interesting. Yeah.
I find it interesting as well that she was, I mean, they're both archaeologists, and she was to do with the Celtic side. So it sounds quite interesting. I wonder if there was something else she was interested in as well, that was,
Right.
you know, feel she has that ability to be very investigatory.
Yeah, and I almost get the sense that these objects attract attention.
Yeah, I agree.
Just having them in, wherever they are, they attract their energy. So it could be a cause for activity.
Well, whatever's happened, they've opened up the Panda's box.
Oh yeah,
Panda's box.
yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Into this one. How many of you have heard of the Hexham heads before? Let me know in the comments if you have or haven't. It feels like such a well-known paranormal case over here in the UK. But when I talk to American friends about it, they don't seem as familiar. This is one of those stories that's been on my list to get to since I pretty much started the channel. But I was pushed to do it now after an interesting little discovery was made back in October. In 1976 at 5:55 p.m, the BBC broadcasted an episode of its usual early evening current affairs show nationwide. But this particular episode would be burned into the imaginations of an entire generation. Tonight's show spoke about a discovery two schoolboys had made of a pair of stone heads that were thought to be Celtic in origin. But ever since their discovery, anyone who interacted with the heads had fallen prey to strange phenomena. The episode came with interviews with several people involved, including Dr. Ann Ross. In stark contrast to normal paranormal fare, seeing a respected history scholar talking about strange goings-on in the night and werewolves gave a certain degree of weight to the tale. But it wasn't just the creepy story. The BBC show paired this with images of severed heads that were disturbingly graphic for a family show, plus a quick shot of Oliver Reed from Hammer's Curse of the Werewolf. It was all more than enough to give the kiddies plenty of nightmares. The footage from this segment has existed in the BBC archives ever since. However, the audio has always been missing, making this segment something of a lost holy grail for those fascinated by paranormal media. But recently, using an AI voice recognition software, the audio for the second half has been recovered. The BBC released the segment as a Halloween treat on YouTube, and for the first time in decades, people were able to hear Dr. Ross's first-hand account of what she saw in her home that night. Much like my recent episode on the Dybbuk box, the story of the Hexham heads is a confusing blend of fiction and reality, not helped by the fact that these stories all centre around events that took place over a relatively short period of time over 50 years ago. Details have been twisted, misremembered, disputed, leaving the true tale of the Hexham heads a slightly confusing mess. But I've tried my best here to lay it out as close to what apparently happened as possible. Let's begin with the discovery, an event that in itself might be one of the most highly contested events that took place. Hexham is a small market town in Northumberland, up in the north of England. While it is of course a place with a long deep history, as is the case with most towns in England, in the 1970s there wasn't really anything remarkable about Hexham. This wasn't a place you expected to be digging up haunted artifacts in any case. 11-year-old Colin Robson was at junior school, sat in a classroom creating a small piece of artwork for a competition. It was a head, crafted out of plaster of Paris. A head that was described as ugly by his headmaster and downright scary by others. Despite this, it won second place in his school's competition. Why Colin chose to make the head, he couldn't say. It just popped into his mind when he was trying to think of something to make. In of itself, there's nothing strange about this incident. The timeline here instantly becomes a little confusing, but in either late 1971 or early 1972, Colin had returned home from school with his brother, Leslie. The pair were bored, to say the least. No one else from their family was home yet. Their mother and father both still at work. And what else would two young boys do to pass the time before their family returned home? They of course decided to dig holes, heading out into the garden to do so. Initially, they were being helpful, pulling out weeds and tidying up, but soon it descended into just digging a hole together, down deeper and deeper into the soil. When they reached around 2 foot deep, Colin shouted out that something was there. He reached into the dirt and pulled out a rounded object, about the size and weight of a cricket ball. He brushed the soil off of it and shouted again to his brother that he had found a head. There, in Colin's hand, was a small stone head, not too dissimilar from the one he had crafted in school some time earlier that year. Leslie was somewhat jealous at his brother's miraculous find, and the pair continued to dig to see if they could find anything else. Sure enough, just 6 inches further down, they pulled out another head. Both heads were a little different from one another, but both had a bit of weight to them and appeared to be very old. Later in this tale, a materials chemist named Dr. Don Robbins would describe them as being different sexes. The first head had a skull-like appearance to it, masculine in features, but gaunt and bony, with a traditionally Celtic hairstyle. The other was more feminine, more rounded and expressive in its features. Some have called them the man and the woman, but others refer to the female head as the hag. This is the one that many have described as giving off a negative energy. Below them were tendrils that struck out almost like a neck, but these were later sawn off during studies of the objects. With their parents out still, the two boys instead rushed to their next-door neighbour. There, Nellie Dodd, the mother of the Dodd family, invited the boys inside, and the three of them took a look at their strange discovery. She didn't quite know what to make of it, and suggested that the boys should take it to the nearby Hexham Abbey. Maybe they could tell the boys what these heads were. The boys phoned their mother at work, telling her they were going to be taking 2 old stone heads to the Abbey. You know, normal boy stuff. And they set off to get the answers they seeked. A priest at the Abbey offered to take the heads and try to find out more about them, telling the boys he would return them in a few days' time. And that was that. An exciting archaeological find by 2 young...
I think it was just coincidence. So the boy making the head was just coincidence. Feels just coincidence, or he was I mean, the photo of them didn't look, they look like 2 little evil boys, really.
So
But
that really stood out. The one on the right. So there was a weird correlation in my head between the heads and the 2 boys.
right,
Because if you look at the face and the shape of both of them, it almost kind of matches that picture in a way
yeah,
of them like holding it up. And I just keep getting like 2 and 2, 2 and 2. Like there's more connection. And then it started to come through that the activity around the heads might actually be from the boy's spirit trying to carry on, like just their significance in general. Like they'll
right,
be a werewolf, they'll be whatever it takes to keep the, keep it going, like almost like a legacy, right? Like
yeah.
it's just weird because it's just like 2 and 2, 2 and 2, and it's like one and the same, one and the same. That's what I picked up on.
I thought that the 2 heads are very much like a sad and a happy theatre heads, you know?
Yeah,
You get the masks.
sure.
It's a memory of that bit. But yeah, one was masculine, one was feminine. Definitely. And I don't want to say cursed or anything, but there is attachment.
That's what. Yes, that's what I was like. There's
I don't know if
attachment there.
I don't know if the attachment is, because there is no such thing as an attachment really, because do things get attached to things? No. It feels like
Not in
Oh.
like not in the physical sense attached.
I got it. So
Yeah.
you know, like our fingerprints, for example.
Yes.
So it leaves a print. So these are 2 objects, and they're just objects on their own. But as soon as you touch it, It's like it is like it's like a telephone call to whatever is connected,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes to it.
Mm-hmm.
I get this. As long as they're together, the two heads are
Right.
together.
Okay.
So it has to have what's the word? They have to be ignited. Not, I don't mean by lit. So it has to be
Yeah. They.
touch or
Yep.
fingerprint or something, that goes,
Right.
and then it sort of then it whatever's
Okay.
there, the energy comes back to it. So
Mm-hmm.
it feels like they're just dead on their own, and as soon as human contact touches it, it then ignites the energy
Okay.
of
Yeah.
what
It kind
these
of
are.
fuels. It gives the
Yeah,
life of
yeah,
the.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
No, that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
then it's like these whatever's connected to it jumps on the train.
Right.
And get, hi, I'm
Yeah.
here. You've
And
missed
then
me.
it's like, oh, I
Yeah,
got something to
whatever.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say curse, but I don't think they are. I think they're like talismans of some sort.
Yeah, I'm not sure the difference, but it is. Yeah, I don't want to say cursed either. That word doesn't feel right.
No.
But that object represents something, spiritual. Like there is
Yeah.
energy. Again, I want to say attached, but it's not. You know,
It's the feminine and
it's almost like
masculine.
a protector vibe. Like it gets summoned when it gets that energy, when it has enough energy to do something. You
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no, that fits.
I wouldn't be surprised if, when ignited, as it were, just bad things happen around people.
Right.
And then as things happen, that fuels our
Hmm.
energy, the energy, fear, boom, boom,
Hmm.
and it just grows.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think there's
Okay.
always a wonder, is it the heads? And
I,
that
I think
continues the connection, like the
it's like
fuel to
a,
it.
like a Tesla. You put, I don't know if it's a Tesla. I don't know why I said Tesla. You put like some cars, you have your fingerprint, you press it, and the car starts. It feels like that with these things.
Hmm.
So it's not, they're just objects, but they have,
Right.
the start of something. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, let's go.
Boys, and that's all it was, until Colin was awoken a few nights later by screaming. Nellie Dodd lived next door with her husband Isaac and their 6 children. For a number of nights after first seeing the heads, Nellie's daughters, who shared a room, had been complaining about a strange sound. They described it as a sort of pitter-patter of feet that they could hear as they lay in their beds at night. Nellie told them they were simply hearing soot falling down the chimney. The night of the incident, 7-year-old Marie was terribly sick with an ear infection. It had taken Nellie some time to get her daughter to sleep, but once she did, she was confronted with her son Trevor, claiming that someone was touching his leg. Trevor shared a bedroom with his younger brother Brian. Nellie assumed this was just a case of the boys messing around and told them to go to sleep. Later, Brian would state that it wasn't just Trevor that felt something touch him. As he lay in his bed, he too experienced what felt like a hand touching his hair, despite there being no one else in the room. Nellie went back to Marie's bedroom, but just before she did, she noticed the landing window was open, flapping in the wind. She was sure she had shut it. Nellie climbed into bed with her daughter, planning to sleep in there with her that night. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, Marie was awoken by a strange sound. She wasn't sure what it was at first, but she instantly knew something wasn't right. The scared little girl looked up. She quickly jabbed at her mother's side to wake her as well. Nellie opened her eyes and couldn't believe what she was seeing. There, standing in the room, was a large figure that she described as being part man and part beast. The lower half of it appeared to be human, but its head almost looked like a sheep, and its feet were hooves. Nellie was immediately terrified. But in her half-awake state, she thought this must be some kind of dream. That was until the creature reached out and touched her. The feel of its clawed hands on her leg was more than enough to snap Nellie violently awake. Nellie screamed, a scream so loud it awoke not just her husband, but the neighbors next door. The creature looked at Nellie and Marie momentarily, before turning and running down the stairs. Isaac Dodd came running in to find his wife in hysterics. They searched the house but could find no trace of what Nellie had seen. However, their front door was wide open, suggesting someone or something had run out of the house. The Robsons rushed next door to see what all the commotion was, and heard the crazy story that Nellie laid out. To this day, Colin Robson remembers the fear in the eyes of Nellie and her youngest daughter. Whatever they had seen had deeply terrified them. Just a few days later, the heads made their way back to the Robson boys. The Abbey wasn't able to provide much more information beyond the fact that they were apparently old. Almost straight away, the strange activity started. It began small, as these things often do. The heads were placed on a shelf in the living room. When the family would come down in the morning, they would have changed positions, facing towards the garden where they had been found. The heads would be put back in their place, only to be found moved again the following day. Colin's mother and father were intrigued by this, and began leaving the heads in different positions. Sure enough, overnight they would move, and what's more, the family would be awoken in the middle of the night by the sounds of their taps running. Colin's father was convinced one of the children was getting...
I got like two magnets.
Mm-hmm.
So the energy around is like two magnets. So if one was supposed to be the left position, it would automatically change around.
Oh.
So it seems like they're not actually, but the energy of it changed really like magnets.
Right.
So they did that sort of what. And I mean, what are they? They're stone. So stone is a magnet, but the energy I think around turns it.
Yeah, interesting.
I also got. I don't think.
Why would they put them on the shelf?
Oh, that's what you would do. Yeah, I remember as a kid finding things and put it on a shelf. I mean, I was looking at, listening to him saying, touched the foot or touched the hair. How many times when you were a kid, you were sleeping,
Right.
you were like sitting in the room, you were hiding under the covers,
Sure.
like going, oh my God. And,
Mhm.
oh my God. I remember once I was so scared, I could hear heavy breathing. I was like, oh my God. I looked and it was a dog.
Yeah. No, I don't sleep with my foot hanging off the bed, like
Oh,
there's
I do. Well,
there's a
my
healthy
feet,
fear there.
I have to stick my feet out because they get so hot.
Yeah.
But I always think one day something's going to go and freak me
Mhm.
out. I also just got something with these two heads. It's like I got as if it's a door. So I don't know. It could be, I don't know, a portal or something. But it's like it opens. Once it gets that connection, it's like a door opens, and anything comes through basically. So I think this thing that comes in, half man, whatever it is just something, because there are other things that cause
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely
things to
think the
happen.
energy of the heads is enough to cause could
It's
call
so
it could attract other entities, could help entities
this is old stuff.
come
This is
through. This
old,
is old.
old.
Yeah.
Where we have like, what can I say? Um, these are old entities. We're
Hmm.
talking caveman old.
Like
They're really old.
even
Yeah,
before I think our
or another dimension or something.
species, like, because with there's been many cycles of our planet. So there's history
Ah,
even
yes,
before,
yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes,
So this
yes.
is like a kind of like before the Homo
Yeah,
sapien,
totally.
like all of that kind of came through. But so when they were talking about like the heads turning towards the garden and things moving, I almost got the sense that someone was trying to help them by kind of faking the movement to get them scared enough to get rid of them or to put them back in the ground. Like it's almost like, okay, put them back. Like this is bad news. Don't mess with it. And it's
Oh,
almost like,
wow. Okay. Because they've
like, oh
opened
yeah,
up
we'll
like a
just make it.
Pandora's box. So there's something
Yeah,
else that's
right. So
saying,
it's like
oh,
it was almost like a friendly like sacrifice. Okay, I'll make it move so they get scared and then put it back because they don't want
oh,
that
yeah,
kind of.
that makes sense.
Yeah, because I got like almost like, no, I'm a friend, but I'm gonna turn them, to make it look like
So it
the
feels like
thing.
I get a guardian
Yeah,
to a guard over these
right.
things.
Hmm.
Oh.
Like, let's just get them back in the ground. Like they
Yeah,
really
yeah,
shouldn't be out and about.
out.
That's
But why
interesting.
did the boys dig it up so deep? I think it's like most things. I think suddenly the kids get a calling and you can't explain it, you know?
Sure,
So I
and
think
he
they did a
did
certain
that
sort of,
kind of
yeah,
previous head. There's something obviously kind of dripping,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
some information kind of pushing him along a little bit.
yeah,
But I also think that there's the light also pushing him like put it back. Like
totally.
yeah, those poor kids.
Okay.
Up in the middle of the night, doing all this, but he never was able to catch any of them in the act. When the family's oldest daughter Wendy came back from her honeymoon, she found her family a little obsessed with these strange heads. She placed them under her bed, hoping to put a stop to this whole thing, but sure enough, when she woke up in the morning, the heads had moved. Then items started breaking. Pictures would fall off the wall. A mirror was found, placed on top of a frying pan that was on a kitchen counter below it. But there wasn't a crack on the mirror. It was as if someone had carefully removed it and put it there. Ornaments were smashed on the ground, with the family becoming convinced that they saw them not fall, but fling themselves across the room, smashing on the opposite wall. The family also began discussing the feeling that there was something in their home. No one ever saw anything, not like Nellie next door had. In fact, at this point, no one had made the connection between what she had seen and the heads coming into her home. But there was just a general feeling that the Robsons were never alone. It wasn't just inside the house that these strange events were taking place. Shortly after the heads had been dug up, a large flower began to grow up from the spot where the boys had found them. What made this so weird, though, was if you were to look out to the garden from inside the house, it was as if the flower was being lit up by a bright light. But if you went outside to take a look, it just seemed totally normal. There was no light. Then, there was the crying. A sound that no one had heard before they had dug their heads up. But afterwards, the family would hear in the dead of night, coming from their garden, the sound of a baby crying. The press quickly became interested in the heads. The initial discovery had drawn their interest, but the subsequent poltergeist-like activity and the apparent sighting of a half-man, half-sheep were too good to pass up. Numerous papers got in contact with the family and ran stories on the Hexham heads. Now, this is where the timeline seems to get very confusing. I've read quite a lot on the Hexham heads, and almost every account seems to explain the events that followed in a slightly different way. For the most part in this story, I've tried to rely on what was said directly from the people involved, but even that seems to be up for contention. According to Colin Robson, television presenter and Reverend Peter Moff turned up on their doorstep one day to interview the children about the head. He explained that a Dr. Ann Ross was going to be in the area giving a lecture, and he was keen for her to see the heads. Dr. Ross was an expert in Celtic history, and many believed at this point that these heads had been left here centuries ago by a Celtic tribe. Jenny Robson, Colin's mother, apparently told Peter Moff he could take the heads, and that they didn't want them back, not after all the strange events had begun. If the heads ever made it back to the Robson household is another detail that appears to be disputed. but Colin Robson claimed that this was the last time he saw the original heads. This is how they ended up in the possession of Dr. Ross, who believed that the heads were Celtic in origin, and believed that the garden may have been the home of a Celtic shrine, stating in one report that they quite often worshipped human heads that were taken from their enemies. She even stated that, if this were the case, then she believed it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that the site the heads were found was in fact haunted. She wanted to get them tested to prove their authenticity one way or the other. But why would an academic, who has been referred to by many as a quiet, reclusive type, be so keen to publicly speak about the idea of a haunted Celtic shrine? Well, as we know, Dr. Ross had her own experience shortly after taking the heads in. Dr. Ross had taken the heads to her home in Southampton, and they were far from the only Celtic objects that were there. Dr. Ross was used to studying these artifacts, but there was something unusual about the Hexham heads. From the moment she handled them, Dr. Ross felt there was something special about them. She was immediately hit with a strange sense of unease as she handled the heads. She instantly locked them away in her study and planned to leave them there until she could take them to Newcastle for further study. 1 or 2 nights after they arrived, Dr. Ross was awoken by a strange sound, and that is when she saw the half-man, half-creature we spoke about at the start of tonight's story. At this time, Dr. Ross claimed she did not connect what she saw with the heads themselves. I'm unsure if Dr. Ross was aware of the supernatural claims that had been made by the Robsons, or the half-sheep, half-man report by the Dodd family. As I say, the timeline is a little confusing to say the least. It's possible that she was brought into this tale purely through the lens of understanding where these heads came from, rather than having anything paranormal explained to her. But equally, it's possible she had read the stories, and these were playing on her mind. Regardless, it appears that Dr. Ross nor her husband decided to tell the rest of their family about what happened that night, which makes what followed all the more strange.
Do you think the half man, half beast appearing is related to the heads? Do you think it's one and the same?
It's strange. I can't think.
I
Not
feel
think,
at
but can't
first I was like,
feel.
no, it's
Uh,
separate, but again, I feel like they're dealing with something we wouldn't understand. I don't think it's something dark and
it's
malicious.
it's old. It's old. Let's say magic in a sense.
Sure.
So it's old magic. It's old time. It's it
Because even
it's stuff.
Celtic has like half man, half beast. They do like the half and half thing
Yeah, like
a
Pan.
lot.
Pan was a bottom part was a goat. Top half was a man,
Right. They
isn't it?
do like
So
the centaur, all of that.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's a lot of half half, and I feel like this is so old.
yeah. I
Again,
agree.
I get Guardian vibe the way that you said that before. Like this is Guardian vibe.
Yeah,
He's just like these are items that I'm watching, and then just happens. Obviously, we see something we don't understand. We go into fear mode,
yeah.
and then it leaves. Like there's nothing, but the energy still does attract
And like I said, I think
things.
the touch activates it and activates whatever
Hmm.
door is open for it to come.
Hmm. It's
Uh,
disturb. Like basically turning on like a siren. Like, hey, someone's messing
yeah.
with this. Go check it out. It's almost like hitting an alarm, and he's security.
I mean,
you know.
there is. It does feel there is something sinister with them, but there's also a caveat, which is, as you said, is sort of the protection part of it.
Hmm.
Um, Oh, I don't
But
get.
to get it back in its place, like it needs to go there. It's sinister in the way that it needs to go back to its like altar. Like if it was in that place of worship,
Yeah,
that's where they belong. And if you take it away, that's when the activity starts kind of ramping up. Put them back. If you were to
right, I
put them
understand.
back, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
things
yeah,
would have probably settled.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
that's interesting.
Let's have a look.
Dr. Ross and her husband returned home one afternoon just a few days later to find their teenage daughter Bernice in what they described as a state of shock. She was shaking and deathly pale. They asked her what happened, and Dr. Ross's blood ran cold as she heard her daughter's encounter. Bernice had returned home from school 2 hours earlier. She had opened the front door and walked in. She headed to the stairs and took one step up. As she glanced up, she was shocked to see a huge black figure standing on the stairs just a few feet above her. Bernice froze to the spot. Whatever this was, it didn't look human. It was some sort of animal. Without warning, it charged towards Bernice, but at the last second it vaulted over the banister to the corridor below and ran off deeper into the house. Much like her mother, strangely Bernice claimed that she felt compelled to follow it, but yet again there was no sign of it. It had just vanished. Bernice, suddenly regaining her senses, fell to the floor in terror, and there she remained until her parents returned home. Following this, the family heard the sounds of the soft padded paws of an animal landing on the hallway floor time and time again, as though what Bernice saw was playing out, stuck on some sort of loop. At times they believed they caught glimpses of a large dark figure out of the corner of their eyes, but never got a good look at it again. Oftentimes, while working alone in her study, Dr. Ross's door would violently jolt open to reveal no one outside it. Dr. Ross had the heads tested, and it was estimated that they were, in fact, around 1,800 years old, and were Celtic in origin. A spanner would soon be thrown into the works of the whole Hexham Head story, though, when a lorry driver named Des Craigie contacted the papers to explain he had formerly lived in the Robsons' home. And what's more, he had created the heads himself as a gift for his young daughter. Des claimed that his daughter came running into the room one day, excitedly telling him that the heads he had made her when she was a child were on TV. Des would tell the Evening Chronicle that he made them about 16 years prior. His father had lived in the Robsons' house until about a year ago, and the Craigie family called it home for 30 years. He made the heads from bits of stone and mortar, just quickly, rolling them up like a snowball, and gouging a face in each of them. And
I don't like that guy.
I don't think it's. I don't believe
No,
him.
I don't
I don't
believe
know
him
why. I
either.
don't believe him.
No,
I know
he just
everyone will go,
wants
"Oh, really? Surely no." There seems to be a whole
like he's trying to piggyback
yeah,
the story and like take it, and it's like, no, dude. I didn't. As soon as they showed his face, I'm like, no, this is so fake and false
yeah. I agree. I agree with that.
and
I
just
agree.
huge ego.
He may have done something. I don't know, something similar or whatever in the past, but these were no. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
don't like them. Don't like
gave
him.
them to his daughter,
Yeah.
who would use the foil from penguin barbs to make eyes for them. He actually made 3, but it appears one was never found. Des found the entire thing hilarious. Dr. Ann Ross was curious about Craigie's claims and wanted to see him create a replica to demonstrate his abilities. The reason for this was that while she thought it was certainly possible that these were not as old as she believed, if they were a recent creation, They had been created to look as close to a Celtic head as possible. This wasn't just a crudely thrown together art project as Des had claimed. It had all the characteristics you would expect to see in a genuine artifact. She also believed that the heads contained some kind of power. After all, how else could she explain what was currently going on in her home? Craigie did create a replica, but most didn't see a distinct resemblance between the replicas and the original heads. In recent years, author Paul Screeton did some more digging into Des and discovered he had quite the reputation of being a prankster. If he did just make the claim of creating the heads as an attempt to get an attention though, he did stick with the story for the rest of his life.
Of course he would.
There is also the strange photo that Screeton included in his book, which appears to show Des with the original heads, but no one, including Des's son, can clarify when and where the photo was taken. One consideration that could be made is that maybe Des did make 3 heads while living in the property, but that these were not the same heads that were dug up. Maybe something there influenced him, planting the idea of the heads in his mind.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why an 11-year-old Colin would make his own heads just before digging the Celtic heads up, a sort of faded memory floating around the garden in Hexham, entering the residents' minds. But it wasn't just Des Craigie's claims that put doubt on the heads. Geologists in Newcastle and Southampton appear to have differing views on the age of the heads, with one expert claiming they were in fact close to 2,000 years old, while the other believed the material they were made from suggested they were a much more recent creation. Eventually, Dr. Ross decided she needed to get the heads as far away from her family as possible. She sent them off to Newcastle's Museum of Antiquities, and almost immediately, the strange phenomena that was taking place in her home stopped. But there are 3 mysteries associated with the Hexham heads. The first is where they came from. The second is what power, if any, did they have. The third is what happened to them. The Hexham heads seemed to pass through various institutes and into different hands after Dr. Ross passed them on, but at some point they made their way to Don Robbins, the man who popularized the stone tape theory, the idea that somehow the images of events and people can be stored in rocks and other objects as almost like a spiritual echo. He believed this could explain what was happening with the heads, that they had somehow captured some sort of past event, and maybe the strange half-man, half-beast creatures people were seeing and the other strange phenomena was simply this playing out after the heads were disturbed. While he didn't witness any direct apparitions, as some of the previous owners did, Robbins believed that there was something to these heads. They gave off an undeniable atmosphere, and he couldn't help but notice it felt like the eyes could see him wherever he placed them. There have been many claims made about who the heads ended up with, but according to Robbins, he passed them on to a man named Frank Hyde. Frank had a keen interest in all aspects of the paranormal, and Robbins believed that he may be able to give insight into what was going on with the heads. Hyde took the heads into his custody and promised to keep Robbins updated on any findings. Apparently, shortly after this, Hyde was involved in a pretty serious car accident. He was alive but injured. Robbins attempted to get into contact with Hyde but found it tricky to nail the man down. Over the following years, he frustratingly struggled to get any information from Hyde about the heads, until eventually he just seemed to vanish. Robbins was quoted as saying it was like he had walked into a fairy hill in a folktale, and with that, the Hexham heads were gone, leaving behind one of the most compelling and enduring paranormal mysteries of all time.
I got I'm just gonna say it. I got a link to witchcraft and Satanism with that guy.
With the guy that disappeared?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he took the heads and was trying to I don't know, conjure or was doing something with the Satanism.
Yeah.
Don't get a sense of what happened. I just got that. Boom. There you go.
And I don't really feel it at all surprising. The man who claimed, right, the one that we don't like, made heads, and then and lived at that house, and then the
Yeah,
kid
yeah,
made
yeah.
heads. Like I don't know about you, I never had the urge to make any heads.
Oh no,
But
I did, Mr. Potato Head.
well, sure, but like to actually like carve and create mini heads,
Yeah,
just I don't think that is a coincidence. I think the energy around those items give off the vibe of
yeah.
what they
It's a
are.
lure.
It's
It
inspiring. Like, and since
feels like it's a lure to
yeah,
get them together, the touch to be able to.
yeah,
What was it? There was something else. I mean, there's many traditions, there's many artifacts throughout the centuries that have something that literally ignites
hmm,
stuff. You know,
sure, yeah.
mysteries, myths,
The
all sorts of
intentions
stuff.
behind creating it, the person that created it, that's a lot of energy
Yeah.
going into a
Over the
concept.
years,
Hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, anyone around it just feels like making heads. You know, yeah, I don't think that's
Maybe that's where Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head came from. They're like, let's make the
yeah. I mean,
heads.
this is the new thing now. Everyone's
Yeah.
making heads.
Okay.
So, what really happened? Well, that's not an easy question to answer. As I've already stated, trying to pin down the details of this one has proved really difficult. For what is essentially such a simple story, every single element seems to have multiple differing takes on events. Even the year that the heads were found is disputed, which starts you off on a difficult road almost immediately. I don't think this necessarily points to the whole thing being a hoax, however. Obviously, newspapers were not sending out their top reporters to jump on what was essentially a silly local paranormal story, leading to numerous factual errors in the initial reports, even down to the witnesses' names. I don't think this really became such a big story until years later, when the BBC Nationwide programme was aired. By that time, the location of the heads was unclear, and no more serious research could be done on them than what had already been carried out. There's also the fact that many of the people who are still talking about this event now, who were directly involved, were literally children when these events took place, retelling events that took place decades ago over a short space of time. Most likely their memories of what happened is the result of how their families had retold the stories in their households over the years. The half-man, half-beast that Dr. Ross and Nellie Dodd saw is an interesting aspect of the story. It's often reported as appearing to be a werewolf, but while Dr. Ross described it as more wolf-like, Nellie Dodd was very clear that it had the head of a sheep or a ram. One interesting story that came out as a possible explanation to this came from the slaughterhouse that was located close to the houses in Hexham. Apparently around the time of Nellie's shocking experience, a small group of locals had gotten rather drunk and decided to steal meat from the slaughterhouse. Apparently one of these men was walking down the street with a sheep slung over his back. A man who spoke to Paul Screeton said he believed that this in fact is what Nellie Dodd saw that night, although there appears to be no evidence that this event took place, nor does it really match up with her experience. There are also suggestions that the abattoir in question is also the home of several reported ghost sightings, including that of a phantom half-man, half-sheep, although it seems these claims were made after the Hexham Head story broke. If you are familiar with the story, and you have noticed that my retelling of the discovery of the heads appears to differ from the more commonly told version, then that's because it is different. I have taken much of the information about the initial discovery and what took place in the first few days from an interview with Colin Robson that was conducted in more recent years. While it's debatable if this version is the most accurate, I thought it made the most sense to go with what he claimed happened, although he doesn't seem to recall the event's timeline with the greatest of confidence. It's hard not to see why this mystery has captivated so many people over the last 50 years. It's a mystery on top of a mystery on top of a mystery. The discovery of the BBC Nationwide episode has given the Hexham Heads a bit of a resurgence in interest. Maybe it's time to begin the search again. Maybe someone out there listening to this can be the person to finally find the Hexham heads and put this strange mystery to bed once and for all. That's all for this entry into the tape library. Again, as I said, this is another tough one to talk about. I really do try my best to present these stories as close to what people directly involved claimed happened. In this case, that likely doesn't present the clearest of narratives, but hopefully this wasn't too confusing. A big source of a lot of the information I included here comes from Paul Scruton's book, The Quest for the Hexham Heads. I maybe wouldn't recommend this book as an introduction to the topic. It doesn't lay out a very clear narrative of the story, but if you are already familiar with the story, then it's likely the most in-depth resource on the Hexham heads you could hope to find.
Well, he's got the voice for it.
Yeah, he has got the voice for it. I got Where Are They? Some top-notch people have got them.
Yeah, they're behind a glass case in some collector's library.
I think it's more what's the word? Somebody's into heavy
Oh yeah.
heavy stuff, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
Mhm.
dark stuff. So it's just added to their
Yep, to their little collection.
collection. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think we're gonna see them anytime soon.
No.
And if I ever come across them, I'm finding that house and I'm burying them back in where they came from.
Oh, you don't want to see the Wolfman?
No,
No.
I'm all right. I mean,
You don't want to
he
sort of
doesn't
wake
seem
up
to be
and
bad.
feel something touching your foot or stroking your hair with a big wolf hat.
Yeah, he's probably like, "Hey, can you put my stones back, please? Like,
Yes.
can you wake up and just put them back here, please? I want to go back to sleep." You know?
Sleep. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't know what else to do. He's just gonna be scary no matter what. So he's just like, oh, you know, that's why he doesn't even like try to hurt. He doesn't even try to come out. He just runs away. He's like, oh no, like, you know what?
No.
I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be scary. That situation
I
is
think
scary.
it feels like a lot of the time it was just stages, and unfortunately, everyone who had them didn't experience the middle to the end stage of what would happen. I think it was very yeah, I think it was luring people in. It was literally like I still get the Red Riding Hood thing again in my head, and I wonder if it has something to do. Oh, Grandma, what big head you have? And oh yes, it all to do this, and it feels like that once you agree and your will wants to be part of it, or do something, then it takes you for
That gives you the permission.
Yeah, it is a mystery. I think people did things to try and get it for themselves and then failed.
Sure.
Yeah.
There is a power to them. There is an energy to them. I don't doubt which is
somewhere else or something else, or you know, I mean, look at Stonehenge, you know, it's Celtic and all that sort of what power that has.
Right.
These have something to the
And if
energy
there
in them.
is a guardian attached to them, you know, witches, they like to enslave the other entities. So hopefully it's not in the hands of a witch, and it's just in a collector that just likes to look at them. Yeah.
So, guys, what are your thoughts on this? This is a quickie. It's something different. I like things the unusual and strange and make you question things. What do you think the Hexham heads are? And do you think the Hexham heads were made by plasticine or what's that stuff you used to use? Play-Doh.
Well, yeah.
Remember Play-Doh?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Oh, we should have got some Play-Doh together and made them up.
Oh, we should have made little heads together.
Little heads. Oh, you see? Oh, gosh. Well, maybe on our next podcast, you'll be able to see these little heads, and we'll get them up for you.
Everyone make their
little But
hexes.
thank you very much, guys, and we hope you enjoyed this video. I did.
I
know
did. I
that.
thought that was
Yeah.
really. I thought that was a really neat story,
Different. It was different. That's what I
and at
thought.
least it
Yeah.
wasn't all staged. You know, like this felt. This felt definitely very real.
The
Very
tape,
real.
if any, if you like the tape gallery, this is fantastic. The
Yeah,
whole his whole stuff,
I'm
and
gonna go
yeah,
follow and
it's really good.
subscribe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really
I
good.
think I'm
We've got
looking
a couple
forward
of
to
more on the pipeline to
Mhm.
watch from him. So watch
Oh,
this
good,
space.
good,
And
good.
remember, like, share, hit the
Yes,
notification bell, and please comment. That'd be
please
lovely. We look
comment.
forward to it. So
Yes.
it's over from me, over from Marcy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.